Then, of course, we have on top of that, and even worse, the whole environmental regulations. Now, it may be that CO2 emissions are leading to global warming. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but I do note that actually global temperatures are somewhat cooler today than they were in 1998. And yet we've set up, through the EU, a mechanism that actually guarantees we will de-industrialise Europe. Why do I say that? I'll give you an example. Big steel firm called Chorus, owned by a massive an Indian magnate called Mr. Mittal. They had a plant up in Redcar, in the northeast of England. They have just closed down in Redcar. Thank you, it's only water, how dull, but never mind. They just closed down in Redcar. They closed down the steel plant in Redcar, and for doing that, the taxpayer is paying them carbon credits of £300 million. So for closing down a factory, for putting a couple of thousand people out of work, for stopping steel manufacture in the northeast of England, this giant multinational called Chorus has earned £300 million. And what have they done? They've just reopened that same steel production in India. So the net effect on CO2 emissions is zero. But what we've actually done as taxpayers, as part of this crazy European Union environmental scheme, is we have paid, in this case, the northeast of England, a company in the northeast of England, to de-industrialise us and move us out to the east. Every single time the European Parliament approves a directive that has been given to us by the European Commission, I can hear in the distance Indian and Chinese businesses roaring with approval. You know, we're not going to have, if we go on like this, the European marketplace, which currently represents 18% of the GDP of the globe, will, it's projected to be 9% by 2020. Frankly, it could best part disappear. This is not an economic model that works. But if that wasn't serious enough, there's something I think that matters far, far more than that. And that is the complete absence of democracy within this system. Many critics of the European Union have said from day one that it's an undemocratic system. Well, by jingo, they're right, aren't they? Because the government of the European Union is the unelected European Commission. It is the civil servants who have the sole right to propose legislation. It is the civil servants who have the sole right to amend that legislation. All we can do, as the elected bit of it, is to effectively rubber stamp and occasionally amend and delay that legislation. It's incredible. It's quite incredible. After two massive world wars that caused such ruin, destruction and misery across Europe, two world wars that were fought to stop people robbing individuals of democracy, to give nation states the ability to run their own lives. It is incredible that with this European Union model we've turned our backs on it. But that was then. But it's got even worse than that. Because in the early part of this last decade, the EU decided, let's stop pretending, let's now announce that we are actually a state. And let's have a European constitution. Do you remember? And, you know, there were big ceremonies and European Union flags and anthems and the launching of this constitution. They tried to pretend that it was being drafted in a way that the Founding Fathers drafted the Constitution of the United States of America. But they had a slight problem. And the problem was that in one or two countries they had to put it to a referendum. And the French said no. And the Dutch overwhelmingly said no. And we all know, had this gone to a referendum in Britain or in Germany or frankly almost every country, the answer would have been no. But what they did, I think, sums up the EU as we know it today. They absolutely refused to accept the no votes, refused to accept their validity. They rebranded it as the Lisbon Treaty. And in fact, an Italian politician, D'Amato, former Prime Minister of Italy, actually openly said the good thing about calling this a treaty and not a constitution is that we don't have to put it to referendums. Just to give you an idea of how democratic these people are. Well, of course, there was a problem, because one country, Ireland, under their constitution, had to put it to a referendum. And the Irish said no. What a wonderful day that was in Strasbourg. We turned up the next day, and we had green T-shirts made with "Respect the Irish Vote," and over 100 MEPs wore them. One of my colleagues even wore a little leprechaun hat. And we were all in very, very jolly spirits indeed. And there was a debate on the Irish vote. And I'll never forget what Martin Schulz, who was the leader of the European Socialist Group and the European Socialist Party, said. Schulz said, in the wake of Ireland voting no, "We must not bow to populism." By which he meant the democratic will of the people of Ireland. We must not bow to populism. And in response to that, I gave one of my speeches in the European Parliament. And for those of you that have seen YouTube, you will know I am consistently helpful and moderate in all things. And I pointed out that actually what was happening here was that an undemocratic organisation was now becoming an anti-democratic organisation. Such was their total contempt for the views of the people of Ireland, of the Netherlands, of France, or anywhere else. They are the masters. They know what is best. They know what is good for us, and damn all of us if we think we're going to have any democratic say. I remember on that day just how angry they'd become. The Schulz again spoke in that debate, compared my behaviour in the Parliament to that of Adolf Hitler in the Reichstag. I mean, there is no form of abuse that these people won't sink to. Danny Cohn-Bendit, who was the leader of the Paris riots back in 1968, said that I was mentally ill. Well, my family might agree with that, but I mean, you know, this is how dangerous these people are. This is why I'm saying to you, the whole thing is anti-democratic. It's only 20 years ago that there was a regime a little to the east of here called the Soviet Union, who used to operate in exactly the same way. They didn't have commissioners, they had commissars. They had 5-year plans, and 10-year plans, and 20-year plans. They organised the thing on the basis of central planning and control. They organised the thing on the basis that they knew what was best for people, and that people weren't competent to decide their own future. And I think that any argument that we can reform, amend or change the European Union to democratise it, to open it up, died in 2005 and 2006 with their behaviour over those free, fair and democratic referendums.